It's time for Straight Talk Live with renowned radio pioneer Edna Howell-Parrish, the television show and podcast dedicated to presenting thought-provoking issues and opinions with the goal of challenging listeners to re-examine their assumptions and expand their opinions and give thought to new ideas and concepts to better their lives and the lives of others. This is your opportunity to participate in making the world better. So without further ado, let's get ready for Straight Talk Live with your host Edna Howell-Parrish.
Welcome to the show. I'm Edna Howell-Parrish. A show I know that you've been waiting a while to hear about. Our tribute today to the late Nikki Giovanni, activist, poet, writer, and a long list of other names that we could add to her list. And a lot of people have been calling and asking about the show. Well, it wouldn't be complete if we did not have the man in Cincinnati who knew her best out of all of us here. He is himself the poet, the author, the writer, the musician, David Mathews. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Welcome.
Joining David is Soulfire Productions CEO, Hassani Scott Mathews, David's friend, his wife, his partner, Hassani. Welcome to the show, Hassani. So glad to have both of you here. You know, when it comes to Nikki Giovanni and when we heard about Nikki passing, a lot of people were just so shocked and surprised. And David, we'll get into a little bit more of your thoughts about Nikki Giovanni, but just initially off the top, when you heard that she had passed, what was just your initial reaction?
It was stunning, even though I knew it was happening. My wife had been in contact with Nikki's staff, and we were hoping that she was going to be able to come to my induction of my book in the library, but it seemed like the cancer had come back. She was back in the treatment and was just getting worse. So I knew it was happening, but still, even when you know something happens, it still kind of knocks you off your feet. So on December the 9th, I lost one of the most important people in my life. I lost a friend, and I lost my poetic rock.
A visitation was held on Saturday, December 14th in Blacksburg, Virginia for Nikki Giovanni. And a lot of people are wondering, well, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. Well, I did post on my Facebook page a message from the family. They have a memorial gift for Nikki Giovanni on that page. If you look at my page, you'll see it. You'll be able to see it as well. I'll post it so you can see how you can go to that tribute page and you can pay tribute to Nikki Giovanni there. It's amazing that a lot of people are still doing that. And they're saying, what can I do? What can I do? Well, here's what you can do. You can go to that page and you can put in your pictures, your memories, your thoughts about Nikki Giovanni. I happened to go on, and it was amazing just to see the people who want to work with them and want to play tribute, that is, to Nikki Giovanni. So I have that scrolling across my screen. It's scrolling now, and we'll have it a little bit later on for you to be able to see as well. As we begin the program, just a bit from her obituary, just so much they had to say about her. Nikki Giovanni, the second daughter of Yolanda Watson and Jones Gus Giovanni, was born in Knoxville, Tennessee on June 7th, 1943. Named for her mother and dubbed Nikki by her older sister, she grew up in Cincinnati and Knoxville. Nikki passed away peacefully on December 9th, 2024, with her lifelong partner, Virginia or Jenny Fowler, by her side. Up until the very end, Nikki maintained her kindness and her grace, passion and compassion, her independence and self-assurance. Many people influenced her life. Her grandmother, Emma Luvinia Watson, was the other significant influence in her life. It was Nikki's grandmother who took her in when Nikki decided she could no longer bear to watch the domestic violence that happened in her household. She attended Austin High School, where her grandfather taught Latin until the end of her junior year, when she was invited to attend Fisk University as an early entrant. During this time, Nikki edited the literary magazine and reestablished a chapter of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. After graduating from Fisk, she entered Columbia University. After graduating there, she went to the MFA program and self-published her first 2 collections of poetry. Despite the sexism pervasive in the Black arts movement, which eventually compelled Giovanni to move away from it, her initial identification with its values popularized it in ways never anticipated by its founders. Now, during the 1970s, inspired by her experiences as an aunt, a single mother, to her newborn son, Thomas Giovanni, she began writing children's literature, publishing several collections of poems, including Spin a Soft Black Song and Ego Trippin', and other poems by young people or for young people. Her gold certified album, Truth is on Its Way, featured Nikki reading her poetry juxtaposed to spirituals and gospels sung by New York's community choir. So much about her books and her literary, just for 6 decades, her poems, her prose and speeches gave us all the imagination that we needed. They gave us fearlessness that she had, unadulterated voice. Her voice was there for us too. A poet, an activist, a teacher, a television host, highly sought after for many different things. In 87, Nikki was recruited to teach creative writing and literature at Virginia Tech, retiring 36 years later as a university distinguished professor. She also received in 2024 an Emmy for the HBO documentary Going to Mars, which was the Nikki Giovanni Project. Oh, I tell you, it's just amazing to have been able to think about. I wish I could have been there, but I know David wasn't. We'll get with Dave to talk about that a little bit later on. But for those of you that are just probably saying, well, I never heard about that. How come I didn't know? Well, Nikki Giovanni's Going to Mars project helps you travel through time and space to reveal the enduring influence of one of America's greatest living artists and social commentators. Here's a bit of HBO's promotion for Going to Mars with Nikki.
I was born in Knoxville, Tennessee, but I am an earthling.
And it's an honor to introduce this woman. She is the most renowned Black poet this world has ever seen. There is no you without this goddess.
So you're sort of a prophet.
I would hate to think of myself as being a prophet. Prophets die.
I'm also a dreamer, but I don't understand why my dreams can't come true. So I will continue to do what my grandfather could not do. I will fight. I am a fighter.
The history of our people is a great history, and it's our duty to tell that story. This is not a poem. This is an explosion. This is a rocket. Let's ride.
That was Nikki Giovanni. It was like a rocket, let's ride. And I think that really appropriately says what she expressed. With all her accomplishments and success, that is, what mattered most to Nikki was quality time with the people that she loved. And one of those people is here today to celebrate her life. 50 years ago, a bold young man from Urbana College, from right here in Dayton, Ohio, who admired Nikki so much, and he was a poet himself and wanted to be one. He said, I'm going to write Nikki Giovanni a letter. That's what David Matthews did. Wonder if he got any response. What about that, David?
Well, I was very blessed to do that. You know, I was a person with a situation where they talk about when one door closes, another one opens. I went to Urbana College in 1970 on a basketball scholarship to play basketball. That's what was on my mind, even though writing was something I did secondary. But when my knee went out in 71 and they didn't have the medical science that they have now, it looked like my basketball career was over, but my poetry career door opened up. And I decided I want to say I decided, but I didn't. Yahweh decided I should write Nikki Giovanni. And the reason I did that, I felt if I was still playing basketball, whether I got drafted or not, I was going to go to one of those pro camps and let them look at me and let them tell me if I had the ability or not. Nikki Giovanni was the hottest poet going at that particular time. And I felt if I could reach out to her and she could tell me one way or the other if I had what it took or not, then that would mean a lot to me. She was working for Encore magazine at the time. She was the editorial consultant. And that's how I reached out to her. As a matter of fact, the first way I even reached out to her was through Jet magazine. There was an article on her in Jet magazine. And that's what let me know that she was editor of consultant of Encore magazine in New York. And so I just wrote a letter to them in care of her. And I sent her 25 poems. They were all handwritten. No one does that anymore. And it was the only package she got that day. I mean, talk about a blessing. And she told me later on that she usually got tons of mail. And when she did that, she would go through 2 or 3 pieces and throw the rest to the side, like probably most of us do. But having one package, she says, okay, I'm going to open it. She read one poem. She said she ended up reading all 25. It took me a couple of months to hear from her. But I still remember my mama coming on the street, and that's what they did when they looked for kids back in the day, saying, David, Nikki Giovanni's on the phone. And everyone in my neighborhood turning and looking at me today. I just hear his mother say, Nikki Giovanni's on the phone. My legs were weak, and that started our relationship. Me going to the phone, talking to her the first time.
So much passed between time and you and Nikki's relationship and poetry, words, music. But I want to go back to that piece that I played, the HBO Emmy documentary, Going to Mars. You told me that you actually went to the presentation and the tribute and that special day. Talk about that.
Yes, thanks to my lovely wife who made that possible. She was asking me, I believe one day, when was the last time I had seen Nikki, and when the last time we had talked, and it had been a while, and she knew about the documentary. She said, let's go to DC, let's see your friend, let's view the documentary. I says, okay. So, an idea put in motion is all you need a lot of times. And we did get a chance to go to DC. I got to see my friend again, who I'd not seen for a while since she was in Dayton at Memorial Hall, and I believe that was in 2010. So it had been a while since we had seen each other. So I got a chance to spend time with her briefly and got to experience her going to Mars. It was so beautiful.
And it's amazing that what I'm going to do is I'll bring your pictures down, and we'll put Nikki up with you because you had a chance to take a picture with her, and I know that was really a special surprise for you. We'll do that.
Well, yes, that was our last very special moment, and never going to forget that.
You look pretty happy. She looked pretty happy too. And that was just what, a year ago, right?
That was about a year ago.
2
years ago. Okay. And the funny thing about our relationship is we were talking on the phone and writing letters for over a year before we actually met. We didn't meet until 1972 on Wilberforce campus, where she was doing a show along with activist Dick Gregory, and they invited me to be a part of that program. That was the first time.
Excellent. Excellent. So much has happened. So much was said in the obituary, again, that I remind people we'll be putting up on the screen, where you can go to Page Tribute and find out more about Nikki Giovanni and actually read that obituary yourself, because it's so long. I only just was able to take so much of it out. But David, we'll talk about more of Nikki Giovanni, but you wrote a poem for Nikki back in 1972. Would you mind telling us about that poem and then share a bit of it? Because I understand that it is in your book, the latest book, Poetry Classics. on page 3.
Page 3, yes. And this is the second time it's been in one of my books. It was in my first book, The Feel the Feeling, dedicated to her. And it had a special place in her heart for a long time, because when I met her, I'd written the poem, and I was working with a printer in Urbana who was very good, and he hand drew each letter in the poem, and we put it in a 20 by 24-inch frame, gold frame, and I gave it to her at Wilberforce. And I know that for years, she said, it hung over her fireplace in Queens, New York. So
All right.
I'm going to do the poem for you, if it's okay.
Excellent. We love that.
Okay. And it's called Taking Time Out for Nikki. Before I do this poem, because I know we have some young viewers out there, I'm going to mention a couple of things, and I want them to understand what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about an 8-cent mail telephone, and I know some of my younger viewers are going to say, what is he talking about? Well, back in 1971, it only cost 8 cents to mail a letter. It cost 5 cents to do a postcard. So you know where we are now. Stamps are, I don't even know how much they cost now, but you get the forever ones and they forever charge you. So that's what I'm talking
65
about.
cents, I think, for a letter. 65 cents for a letter to mail.
That's what it is. Wow. And there's another thing I
Yes.
talk about toward the end. I talk about I want to meet her like mirrors touching mirrors, eyes touching eyes. I was hoping that it was not just going to be a one-time meeting, that we would become friends. And I didn't know it was going to be over 50 years worth, but that dream came through as well. So let me read you the poem. Taking Time Out for Nikki. I have something to say, and I must call on you, ink, as a translator of my feelings. Giovanni, this poem is for you. So do something for me which will do good not only to you for your physical body, but your inner soul. Relax. Now begin to set those dancing eyes of yours so that they may flow with the ink as a ballet up and down these pages. You wrote a poem once for Aretha, and it withheld meaning enhanced with truth, endurance, and beauty. But did you forget about yourself? You function much in the same mannerism, Aretha to Giovanni, or one prophet to another, both in the same context but different scripture. Though I can express your torn and worn out feeling at the end of each pressing day, communicating, the joy of reaching one, the sorrow of reaching none. One day I reached out to you through Visualized Jet magazine, then again through 8-cent mail telephone. I reached out for you, Nikki. You, Nikki, godmother, the power of the pen, and I am like a godson of yours, admiring you and following in similar footsteps. You know, oftentimes I build fantasy rationalizations. Dunbar was the prince of black poetry, then Giovanni came along like a long-forgotten wife and let it be known that she was the princess of the same feeling, but with different flow of verse. I have hopes of gaining this same royalty by becoming an extension of you both. I listen to the words as they reminisce an enchanting environment, which is nothing but a has-been now. You see, birds say a lot, you know. For they were singing the blues on Monday, followed up by Tuesday way before B.B. King. They say the Supremes came along and said they wanted the ghetto to stop in the name of love on Wednesday. Thursday, the Temptations were saying, think about it, think about it. The ego flies like any other day on Friday, but he also flies in the ghetto. Its residents began restocking health nourishments from what they consider drugstore medicines but is better known as the State Store of Liquors. Said he brings back instant replay of Friday night slum choir drunks, though not all's bad. For those of you who make it through the weekend revival, put on your sin cufflinks and starch wine shirts and walk into the doors of the church on Sunday. I'm just talking about fantasy rationalization. Nikki, they read your poetry too. Clap for you on television, but in another state of mind for me. For tears fall without cries, especially when there's joy present. Ink, speak my feelings to Nikki. You interlocked my self-confidence of writing with words of encouragement. Within your bosom of true feeling of blackness, I long to touch you another way, like mirrors reflecting mirrors. I touching I.
David Mathews. So David, taking time out for Nikki, and I know that she had to have loved that poem.
That was one of her favorites.
One of her favorites. For people that are listening, our chat line is open, so you can feel free to write comments to David or questions that you may have for him and Hassani over your 50-year career as a poet. And as you continued with your work, did you think that was, and this is a question you might not be prepared for, but did you think that was a way of making a living for you to be a poet? Or were there other things in your life that kept you busy and kept the money rolling in?
Well, I have 2 degrees. I have a BA in sociology and a BS in behavioral science. And I've worked with middle school kids. I've even taught creative writing at Upper Bound programs. So I've always, matter of fact, I have about 30 years working with youth. So I've always had other different jobs. And, I'm a musician, so I played with different bands. But I thought I had something that would put me out there with the rest of the top poets at the time. And we had Sonia Sanchez, we had the Last Poets, we had Gil Scott-Heron, we had Nikki Giovanni, we had Gwendolyn Brooks. And for some reason, when I went to the libraries and looked at them books, I felt I should be on that shelf too. And that I should be, as my daughter said, she said, I wasn't selfish. I didn't keep my art to myself. I want to share it to the world. And so I did.
And so you did. And so you did. The main lady in David's life is his wife, friend, and business partner, Soulfire Productions, Hassani Scott Mathews. Again, welcome to the show, Hassani. Now, you and David possess many of the similarities in your love for writing, poetry, music, Black and community culture. Let's talk about that. Is that what brought you two together? Just, I know you weren't prepared for that, but I just want to know. Because like-minded people think alike, I guess. Iron sharpens iron.
They say birds of a feather flock together.
Amen.
But I wasn't flocking to David Mathews. I didn't like. I had my own career. I had my own agent. Back in the 70s when I returned from California, where I really investigated my strengths because I'd been writing since I was 8, or imagining lives otherwise not experienced at 8. When I moved to California, I ended up at USC taking creative writing classes. In fact, the young lady whose family owned Ebony was in one of my classes. Now I'll let you figure out who Linda is. Linda Johnson, Rice now.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, so when I came back to Dayton, I got into small little areas of writing and was noticed. I got on Channel 2 with some of my work that my agent got in. She and I fell out because she wanted me to take theater classes and be like David Mathews. And I kept hearing this David Mathews guy. And I'm like, I'm not David Matthews. I'm Hassani Scott. And I am not going to be whoever this dude is, but I don't like him because y'all keep trying to make me be like him. As a matter of fact, I met Nikki in 1978 at Belinga Center, and she was with Hakeem Madhubuti and Gwendolyn Brooks. They had some kind of work going on. You remember that? Okay, well, then she and I talked, and she said, hey, you'll never make it in Dayton, Ohio. You need to move to New York. And I had 3 little babies. I wasn't moving my babies to New York. But Dave, she took everywhere. I mean, he went to Europe, and she presented him to the colleges and universities that he actually ended up attending, and 300 of them across 21 states. So, I didn't like the dude. I didn't like him.
Amazing. Before you go on and talk about Soulfire Productions and David's performance at St. Clair this past year and publishing his book, I want to just take a little history travel in pictures real quick. I'm going to lower you guys and me, and we're going to let the audience see some of how David went through some of his performances and people that he met along the way. We'll do that, and then we'll come back with us back on the stage. And okay, quickly, I just kind of did a little showing of some of the pictures because it goes back in history, David. We're jumping around here, but first one I showed was a picture of you on the cover of a newspaper in Urbana, 1973. Brings back lots of memories, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Long before there was Hassani Scott, there was David Matthews. I showed the picture of you with that, looked like it might have been a Polaroid with Nikki Giovanni.
Yeah, and she's holding that 20 by 22 inch poem that I had.
Yes. And then and then there was the I'm going to reduce this again. I'm going to show a picture of you, Nikki, and Dora, who is one of your stage managers. And then one of me and you. The one I showed of me and you is when I used to work at WCXL in Cincinnati. That was probably maybe 50 years ago myself, when I first even was introduced to poetry, because to me, poetry was nice and everything, but I never saw a performance like David Matthews. So here's David. In your past life, you were married before, and your wife sadly passed away. And we'll show that as well. Just a second. Okay, I thought I had a picture of I guess it didn't show up. I had your wife, previous wife, Dora was your manager, and Ruthie, right? Ruth, yeah, who I knew, and just amazing. So we can get caught up in time with going back in. Hassani, as we talked about you and David's love of music, and then you all collaborated, created a marriage, a family together. and then he began to work with you and your company, So Far Productions. Let's talk about publishing of the book, Poetry Classics, and how that worked into the performances that took place at Sinclair Community College this past year.
Well, again, I must mention that I knew him, but more than knowing him, I knew Ruth, his previous wife, that sadly passed away in 2019. Because I lived on one end of the alley on Salem, and they lived on the other end of the alley on Lexington. The two merged. So when I realized that it was the guy that I didn't like living right down the street from me, I was amazed. But she and I and David were famous friends because she understood the poetical world. I just felt like I needed to say a kudos to Ruth because she was the impetus that kept him going. And when we reconnected back in 2019, Ruth had only been gone for, maybe 6 or 7 months. And I was producing a show at PNC Arts Annex, and I didn't have a headliner. And I had sent my condolences to Dave, and he and I got to talking, and I was telling him that I was probably going to cancel. I didn't have a headliner that I really wanted. I had artists coming from everywhere. I had artists from Canada, New York, Indianapolis, and then a local artist that Dave brought in after he came in. But Dave was my headliner. And during that time, we talked about his previous books and all of that. And then COVID hit, and we had to slow down our rhythm and soul performances because we had decided to start this back up and take it back to the colleges and, reinvent the wheel, sort of. And while COVID was taking over America and abroad, I mentioned to David, would it really be nice at this time if you could write another book so that we could have it ready? And Dave said, are you serious? I got a book that I wrote 19 years ago. And I'm like, what? 19 years ago, and you haven't done anything with it? Well, I've been so into my music, and because he didn't say this, but he had opened for Gil Scott-Heron. He had opened for Grover Washington. He had played with War. So his thing was now he was getting deep into this musical thing that he started in college. And I was shocked. I'm like, man, we took over the city with our first rhythm and soul. Let's get this book done. And in the meantime, while we're doing this book and getting it completed, I met with Michael Carter at Sinclair. He's a diversity, I think, chairman, right, CEO of there. Well, he's also the assistant to the president there. And I told him about my husband and all his accolades, and this museum that Michael has at Sinclair just really promoted all the past greats. And so we decided that with the finishing of his book for Poetry Month, which is in April, Michael and I would bring him to Sinclair because actually David had appeared at Sinclair in 1980. So that marked, or 1984, I'm sorry, that marked 40 years of David's appearance since he came to Sinclair. It was just a perfect marriage. Perfect marriage. So that's how that happened. Just, when you are clustered in, you don't have anything to do but talk about what can be, you make things happen. And that's how it happened. And
David is a recipient of so many awards and presentations. One of them are several literary awards that were presented to him as well. Can you talk about those for me?
Yeah, wow. I mean, he's gotten recognition over the course of his 52 years of being a creative. And I couldn't believe how Ohio had opened up their doors to our literary heroes, and his name wasn't there. So I contacted the Ohio Anna Library of Columbus and said, I'm also a writer and a poet, but more than that, my husband, and I began to do that. And the next thing I know, they took a look at him and said, we need him, we want him. From that came the key to the city. I had a conversation with Jeffrey Mims, and we talked about David's 5 decades. And so he's had numerous awards and presentations. Voyage magazine did an inspiring writers piece on him out of Los Angeles, not the Ohio one, but Los Angeles jumped in, and then Ohio came in and said, hey, we want to do something too. I just haven't gotten around to them yet, but I will. They have another program that they want. They don't want Los Angeles to take him, because Los Angeles gave him his first 2 awards.
Wow. That's like something people always say, sometimes sometimes your hometown just forgets who you are. So, but his hometown of Dayton this year did recognize David with the key to the city. I'm going to show you that key to the city, and then a picture with David with the mayor Jeffrey Mims, and David holds his arm up like this with in jubilation of something. So I'm asked David to comment on. So to David Matthews on his poetical excellence and his contribution to the city of Dayton. And what was that fist up with the jubilation?
My friend Rudy Benjamin teased me when he saw that, because he said, you look like one of the brothers in the '68 Olympics. And
exactly.
And I said,
Rudy Benjamin, the basketball player from back in the day. I remember Rudy, yeah.
I told him that the reason I was doing that, because I did a little research myself. And what you don't have to research is all the bad things that Dayton Public Schools gets attached to them. But you never hear about all the good things. And I remember reading that Central High School was the first Dayton Public School here downtown. And that's where the Wright brothers and Paul Laurence Dunbar went. So we've had famous people coming out of Dayton Public Schools, being Davis, Edwin Moses. We've had football players, Leophis Hayton, and I could just go on and on and on. And you're right. We are recognized abroad way before we are at home for some reason, because there were streets named after Edwin Moses in Europe way before there was one named after him here in Dayton, Ohio. It just seems to be like that. And I would love to sit down with David Lawrence, my wife and I, and offer him a suggestion. I think that people that know come from something become something. And what I would like to see on the walls of Dayton Public Schools is people's names like being Davis, like Edwin Moses, like myself, people that have made a difference and have become someone. And these people get to walk down these halls and look at these names every day. And basically what they're probably going to say is, you know what? One of these days, my name's going to be on that wall, because I come from greatness. You see, you have to see greatness to know that you come from.
We don't want to leave out the musicians. Dayton is known
that is
for the boogie.
Oh, God.
So, I mean, there's so many accolades that can be merged into the minds of these students. And I mean merged as an educator myself, because I did teach in Dayton Public Schools, and I was a part of the administration at Central State University. So I just really and truly am excited about what the future holds for David. I'm hoping that everything he's dreamed of comes about.
I want to pause here just for a second and have my wife tell you a little bit more about what she does, because she told you she's a poet, she told you she's a writer, but she didn't tell you anything about the people she's working with in California and about her sitcom and about her trailer and all that that's put together. Want you something about that?
Do you want to hear about that, Edna?
Absolutely. You can't keep that from me. You got to tell that. And then when he comes on, we got to let people know when and where, you know.
When we, in a previous podcast you and I had together, I talked about my book, The Rhythm of Love. And at that time, it hadn't been sanctioned for any particular production company. We were shopping. And so got a call from Los Angeles, and one of the producers of Light Chaser Productions asked if we could create a liaison for him to pitch my book as a series for one of the HBO channels or something like that. And so right now they have created a deck, which is how they present you to the investors, and they're desperately trying to find the financing because they really felt like that story needed to be told. And it's more of a positive or realistic approach to African American women of substance, because my protagonist is one that has money. But prior to that, I've been creating, along with David, the Rhapsody and Soul program through Soulfire, and I brought in talent like Georgia Me. She's a Peabody Award winner and just a fantastic person. Tamara. I'm saying Taz's name wrong because I don't ever call her that. Tamara is nationally and internationally known writer that I brought in. I brought in Lauren Proper from New York, a young lady out of Canada, Ralph Farley from Dayton, Leroy Bean from Dayton, Cal Fleming, who now lives in Cincinnati but was from Dayton. Prior to that, I had a travel publication where I've worked with people like Ben Vereen and Clifton Davis and John Amos and even Nancy Wilson, talking about travel across our globe. So I've been involved with art. I am a creative, and I just love the fact that I had the help of the city of Dayton when they wanted to work with Montgomery County. They nominated me to be on their first Black Festival programming, where I brought in all the talent, and I was on the art division of that, bringing in artists from all over. I've worked with DATV, I've worked with Film Dayton. So there's just a lot. I've worked with Ed Dixon as part of my, Ed Dixon has the art gallery downtown. I've worked with Culture Works. I've worked with Minuteman Press, who produced all of our books. I mean, he's Dave's poetry classic. They printed and helped produce a lot of our Rhapsody and Soul shows. So here's the big thing. We're working now for funding for Wordology, which is a documentary about David.
Wow.
We're hoping that in 2026, by then, we'll have the correct funding to revisit. But as we do that, we have created a program called the Reunion Tour, where we are starting with Ohio colleges and taking David back to some of those stages that he performed in back in the day. Right now, we have the interest of Antioch College. We have the interest of University of Dayton. The Dayton Metro Public Library wants to bring him back in Poetry Month for a performance. And since his induction into the library,
Wow.
David has been invited to be inducted and has been inducted in the Cincinnati and Hamilton libraries. So that
Wonderful.
this book, Poetry Classics, that took 19 years of dust, is now everywhere.
Amazing. Well, before David, I'm going to ask you to present another piece from your book, another poem, Poetry Classics. But I want to make sure people get a chance to see what the cover looks like. Promotion from an event that took place. But I just wanted to make sure they could see that up close. So, David, another poem, please.
Definitely. Again, I'm gonna do one of Nikki's favorites. She's got about 10 of mine that she just claimed that's one of mine. That's one of mine. And I wrote this poem in 1984. It also became the title of my book in 1984, called Message. And when I wrote it and she read it, she says, "This poem will never go old. And you're going to probably have to do it over and over and over until people get it." And I believe she has also now joined our ancestors and is looking down on us, hoping that we do this. Message. Children of the earth, the time has come for us to go forth and become fruitful in the sharing of our wisdom, giving back to our foregoing the knowledge of our experiences which we have collected by walking through closed and open doors, by walking inside weak and strong minds, by walking and touching cold and warm hearts, by walking down endless and dead-end alleys, by walking beside and inside self. Look at my eyes until you become comfortable with their rich, dark color of distance, past, present, and future. And if you might, while also gazing, open your mind to its greatest capability, it is very possible that you will set free an extension of yourselves. Please, please do not deny the feel of the flow of this positive energy, for it is only a blessing stored upon you from birth. From birth. From birth.
The poet is here, David Mathews. I can remember back from when, I first heard about you as a poet, and you put on this big production at Dayton Convention Center, and you did the statement from that advertisement was, "The poet is coming, the poet is coming," and then I thought you could stand up there and read in front of a microphone, but I got there, I had never seen this before. There you were in costume. There was smoke, fire. I mean, this a big production, and changing clothes and costumes. I mean, it was a Broadway production. David Mathews, the poet is coming. I'd never seen that before, and people went crazy over that. And then I moved out of town, and so I didn't hear from you for a while. I didn't know anything about you until I moved back to Dayton 40 years later. And here you are still doing it.
And
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Hassani.
For the compliment. Nikki told the colleges, do not bring me after David's performances. If you're going to have
she
me,
did?
Yeah, she was not going to compete with that. And do you think I was? No.
It was a compliment that I'm not going to come behind.
I'm not going to come behind her. You bring me.
Yeah.
You bring me first, because he put a new spin on what now people call spoken word. They didn't know that he was the predecessor of that.
And all he's doing is bringing poetry to life on stage, rather
You
than just
did.
actually bring it to life.
Wow. So is the part coming again? Is he come? I know you never went anywhere. You always have been here, but will that kind of a production ever come back again?
Well, it's a mini production now with about 4 or 5 people, with my daughter included, who started traveling on the road with me about 10 years old, and also majored in theater at Stiver. So she's got a knack for it, getting it from dad. But yes, we're going to do that. It's always going to be a mini production, maybe not a full production, because that's what people know me as. They know me as being the different. If I go to reading my book, that's what everybody else does, and that's not what made me. And I think I told you before, when I first met Nikki, she said, David, with all the poets out there, and by poetry being the least sold book compared to the Bible, which is #1, she said, what's gonna make you different? Why are people gonna buy your book? Why are they gonna come to your shows? I said, because when they see me, they're gonna say, I have never seen anything like that before. And I tried to live up to that. And the greatest feeling for me is to be somewhere and someone come up to me, and this just happened last week. Somebody says, hey, David, you the poet. Saw you at Tuskegee Institute back in '83. I saw you at Indiana College. I saw you here. And they still remember you, and I only came to maybe do that one performance at their university. So what I said did take place. When they see me, they're never going to, because I'm different.
So perhaps Black History Month, April
Yeah.
Poetry Month, we'll be seeing more and hearing more from David
And we'll keep up.
Matthews.
And we'll keep up with you, let you know.
That's what I'm working
Amen.
on.
Amen.
Anyway.
Well, right. What would you like to do next, David? Because I know you have a piece that you have produced that really touches the hearts of me and a lot of people around the world, with people just out of control with how they treat one another. Man's humanity to man, woman's humanity, woman's violence and evilness to each other. I mean, so you're addressing that in some of your work.
Well, I tell everybody all the time that Father Yahweh gave me this talent, and all my poetry comes through him. And I tell my wife all the time, I said, when I dream dreams, I dream dreams of me on stage and how I'm presenting this piece. I said, when I start dreaming crazy dreams, I come out of that dream. But each one of my poems have their own personality, where some of them have been performed on stage and some of them haven't. But this one took a whole new perspective. It became a video audio, and I didn't know that in the beginning, because in the beginning, the first week, it was just a poem, and then it came to me how it was going to be presented and the music that came with it, when the music was going to come out. And I'm running back and forth to my engineers trying to get this created. And during the whole time that happened, which was about 4 weeks ago now, the crime kept coming. I mean, as you and I had decided I was going to be on your show, and we started counting from that moment. First, you had the situation in Wisconsin with the young lady, 15, and I don't know what's wrong with the young ladies no more. As my daughter said, the young ladies must have left town, but they're getting just as involved in the violence as the guys are. And then we had another situation here in Dayton, where we had some youth who they had got a gun out of the house, and they decided to go on the street corner for a show and tell, and somebody gets shot. And we had a situation yesterday in Trotwood where we had a person who was running from the police, and police got shot in the leg, and I believe they took their own life. So it's something that's happening all around us, not just here in Dayton, but you realize it's bad when a little small town Christian school in Wisconsin of 200 people, which you think are going to be safe because of that environment, are not safe. So I wrote this poem. It's entitled, "The Word Violence Must Be Stopped." I mean, we're going to have to eliminate this word from our lives. People are going to have to get their patience back in order. They're going to have to get their feelings off their sleeve so they're not so touchy. Why they looking at me? Who's mean mugging me? You know, we got to go back to loving each other like we need to.
Warning, 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 warning. The word violence must be stopped. Violence comes to destroy, damage, shut down, and remove life from existence. It demolishes the faith of peace in oneself. At all times, be aware of its annoying presence. Any encounter with it, step far away from it, not beside it, behind it, and definitely not in front of it. Somehow, some way, we have got to bring back the art of patience and enjoy life, or there will be no life left to enjoy. Somehow, some way, we have got to bring back the art of patience and enjoy life, or there will be no life left to live. You see, this word violence, it must be stopped. The meaning is destruction, and its whole idea is about killing, taking every breath from life. I wonder why. We have become so comfortable with violence that we don't mind sitting beside it or standing up for it. I don't believe anyone was born violent, but it is something a lot of us have become. We're just too relaxed with violence, being a part of our everyday lives. I'm telling y'all, this word violence, oh, it must be stopped. Numb from the random gunshots ringing out in neighborhoods day and night. But like a passing rainstorm, we pay it no attention. Pretending to hear nothing, rolling over, covering our heads and going back to sleep. Hoping it was just firing off old firecrackers once again. You see, most people are so glad it didn't happen to them. It's easier to just move on with their lives as if nothing happened. I'm telling y'all, this word violence, oh, it must be stopped. Before it kills us all, then there will be nothing left but the evidence of destruction. If necessary, change shirts often to keep your feelings off your sleeve. I said, if necessary, change shirts often to keep your feelings off your sleeve. Oh, this word violence, it must be stopped. For it has taken all our safe places away. Preschool, elementary school, high school, colleges, universities, churches, places of worship and fellowship, neighborhood stores, fast food places, fancy restaurants, movie theaters, on the highway, off the highway, in the streets, at the park, all not safe. We have let violence move not only into our lives, but inside our homes and hearts. The time is overdue. We must evict violence from our surroundings. We have got to slow down and develop our patience. And we must realize only with the Father's help and our faith will mankind continue to exist. Take a step back. Take a moment. Take time to gather yourself before spinning out of control. Exit violence in your life and accept peace so that there will be life. Put your foot on anger and keep it there. Leave pride, ego, and jealousy at home in the closet before you leave the house. And just before you go out the door, remember always to take your angels with you. Warning, 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 warning. The word violence must be stopped. Must be stopped. Must be stopped.
I think the message hit home for that one. I think you could keep documenting violence every day and you'd never catch up. You'd have to make a video every day to be able to document all the things that happen because it's just so frequent. And so I don't know where our world has turned to. But the message hits home. Where can people see this video again?
They can go on my website, David Mathews, author, poet, musician.com, and go into the author poet section. They'll see that video, and they'll also see one I did for George Floyd. And then there's a third one. So they can go there to see it, and then they can go to YouTube to see it. You're right. This is serious here. I mean, you can't hide and barricade yourself in the house. I know my wife will say sometimes, well, I don't want to go here, I want to go here. I said, you're going to have it where we can't go anywhere. I said, so what I do is I just take Yahweh with me, take my angels with me, and I go. Because, see, I know through him, he will lead me through the valley of the shadow of death, and I should fear no evil. Not rod, not staff shall comfort me all the days of my life. See, so I believe that. So I can't walk around in life like I'm walking on rice paper, because things going to happen, okay? But you got to realize where your presence and where your place is.
I remember in reading the obituary for Nikki Giovanni, she left her home in the Cincinnati suburban area of Lincoln Heights because she says she got tired of violence at home. Many of us have grown up in homes where there was violence. Even in our adult life with relationships and marriages, violence strikes there too. And it's not uncommon that Nikki, she hated it so much she had to leave home and go with her grandmother who took her in. And so we end with that thought, as you gave us that poem, the violence has to stop. Your heart's connected on that with Nikki Giovanni. And so our show is coming to an end. And I can't thank you enough for, your time, the work you've put into giving us the information, Asani's works that she did to put us into the information. We did a show a couple years ago on my Straight Talk Live program. And when you decided that you wanted to do a show and you asked me, we had no idea that Nikki was going to pass away. But it's just the natural timing of God and how things are going to work. We didn't know.
Before I do want to make a comment about Nikki because on November the 13th, I sent her a very long text asking her if she would consider, actually being present when David receives the key. And Nikki sent this back to me. She said, so happy for David. I'm in my treatment now and sending my best, Nikki. So even in her illness, she wanted to share the love she had for her protege. from 1972. And that
Amazing.
it is heartwarming to know that she must have been really ill. But, you know, love it goes beyond the flesh.
And that's what she was about. The poet of love, Nikki Giovanni. She loved love. Before we go, I do want to show a picture and talk about Willis Bing Davis, who is Dayton's phenomenal, world-renowned artist, and the piece that he did for you, and how the comparison of Paul Laurence Dunbar and you. I just left that up there a little bit. Let's talk about that piece.
That piece was dedicated, it's one of my precious possessions. It was dedicated to me in 1980 by Bing Davis. And the story goes that when I wrote the poem, I lived down the street from him at the time, about 2 blocks away. We were always good friends. And I called him and woke him up at 3 in the morning reading this poem, Time Brings About a Change. And about 6 months later, I realized that it had motivated. He invited me up to his studio and he showed me the painting. And he always used to tell me, he said, people need to read Paul Laurence Dunbar's poem, We Wear the Mask. And they need to read your poem, Time Brings About a Change. There's such a comparison of those 2 poems just done in 2 different time periods. And because of that, I want all those people out there that are listening, do something different this holiday season. Get your friend or a relative, get them poetry class.
Awesome. Awesome. Our tribute to Nikki Giovanni is coming to an end, but before we go, I have one piece that I want to do and show. 10 questions with Nikki Giovanni.
How did you begin?
By dreaming.
What is the shape of your mind?
Round.
How will you live now?
Happily.
What are you least afraid of?
Darkness.
What are the consequences of silence?
Fear.
Who should take responsibility?
I should.
What will people mourn most when you're gone?
Love.
Is history fair?
History is honest.
Is the world ending?
No.
Who do you love?
I love myself.
A thank you to All Arts Production for those 10 questions with Nikki Giovanni. A perfect way to end the show.
Beautiful.
David Mathews with the lowercase d. No, Edna didn't make a mistake. Hassani Mathews with the lowercase letters. Edna didn't make a mistake. That's how you as artists present yourselves. And I thank you for your time. I thank you for your love. Thank you both very much.
Thanks for tuning in to Straight Talk Live with renowned radio pioneer Edna Howell-Parrish, the program dedicated to presenting thought-provoking issues and opinions with the goal of challenging listeners to re-examine their assumptions and expand their opinions and give thought to new ideas and concepts to better their lives and the lives of others. Join us next week for another opportunity to participate in making the world better. So until next week, live your best life from your friends at Straight Talk Live and host Edna Howell-Parrish.